Hello, boys and girls. Greg from the Scary Spirits podcast here to make you another cocktail. Tonight's cocktail is called the Catatonic. I'm going to start with our Collins glass. To that, we're going to add a couple slices of orange. Then we're going to add a half an ounce tonic water. Half an ounce of tonic water in there. We're going to take our muddler and we're going to muddle. All right. We're going to fill the glass with ice. Like so. We're going to take our vodka, 1 ounce. One ounce of vodka. Grand Marnier. 1 ounce. Then we're going to top with ginger ale. So, then we're going to mix it. Garnish with an orange. And enjoy. It's pretty good. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy the podcast. See ya.
How long can you hold a grudge? Well, if you're like Dr. Crespi in this week's episode of the Scary Spirits podcast, The Crime of Dr. Crespi, it's a long time. Long enough, in fact, until all the stars align and you can exact your long-awaited revenge. Could you wait that long? But then, is the devious outcome worth the revenge high? Only you and Dr. Crespi know for sure. Cheers!
Welcome to the Scary Spirits podcast. Please be advised that the presenters may use adult language and/or discuss adult situations. This podcast is not intended for younger listeners or those that may be easily offended. So, if you're ready, let's go.
Hi, I'm Greg.
Hey, I'm Karen.
and welcome to the Scary Spirits Podcast, the podcast that combines the two very different but highly compatible worlds of scary films and alcoholic spirits.
What could possibly go wrong?
Indeed. How are you, Karen?
I'm fantastic. How are you, Greg?
I'm okay.
Okay, good to know.
Karen, whose choice was this film?
I believe it was yours, Greg.
Was it? Was it mine?
I think it was.
The film I have chosen is called The Crime of Dr. Crespi from 1935.
And why did you choose this wonderful film?
Well, Karen, it stars your favorite actor.
Oh, yeah, my favorite actor. I keep forgetting he's my favorite actor.
Dwight Frye. He had a big part in this film.
He did. And he did not act Renfield-like.
No, he did not.
Which is a nice change.
Yes, he played a fine, upstanding young doctor. Correct?
He did.
Which is why I chose it.
Because he played a fine, upstanding young doctor?
No, because he's your favorite actor, Karen.
You did not choose this just for me. Why did you really choose it?
And today is his birthday as well.
Ah, there it is.
So happy birthday, Dwight Frye. He would have been 124 years old today.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Thank you for entertaining us for all these years.
Thanks for being my favorite. Only when Greg reminds me, but still. We'll go with it.
I do have a cocktail, Karen, as well.
As you should. What is it?
Cocktail I've chosen is called the Catatonic.
Appropriate.
It is. It's actually called the Ruffino's Catatonic, which is a restaurant in Louisiana, and this is one of their signature drinks. I found it on their YouTube channel.
Oh, nice. They show you how to make it on their YouTube channel?
I had to guess at one thing, but pretty sure I nailed it.
I'm pretty sure you did too.
Would you like to know how to make it, Karen?
Well, I would like to know if you just put their YouTube video up or if you actually made the drink yourself too.
I did. I made the drink.
Good. I don't want to shock our listener.
Yeah, I am not a young, attractive young woman. So, no, that's who made the drink in the
original video.
The original video, yes.
All right. Well, we still love you anyway. How do you make this drink? Well, first we should say that Greg does make every single one of our cocktails on the YouTube channel, Scary Spirits Podcast. That's what we're talking about. So please go there and have a look at a not young lady making the cocktail this week.
First, we need to gather our ingredients, Karen.
Always a good plan.
We're going to need tonic water, vodka, Grand Marnier. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Sure.
Ginger ale, and orange slices. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take a Collins glass, Karen, and we're going to muddle the 2 orange slices in the Collins glass with a half an ounce of tonic water.
We do love a good muddle.
We do. Who knew we were so good at muddling? Then we're going to fill that glass with ice, Karen. We're going to add 1 ounce of vodka, 1 ounce of Grand Marnier, and then we're going to top off the glass with ginger ale. Then we're going to mix it, Karen. I mixed it like the bartender did.
And how was that?
She poured it into a mixing glass and then poured it back into the regular glass, and that was it.
Oh, okay. Good idea.
Then you garnish with an orange slice, serve, and enjoy.
It's very fancy.
Quite refreshing, too. And
it
loaded with vitamin C, I'm sure.
See, looking out for everyone's health.
It makes it healthy.
It's very refreshing. It would be a very good summer drink by the pool.
It is.
It's good.
Delicious.
I think so, too.
It is kind of a summer drink, I would say. Yeah. Sitting by
after
the pool.
some thirsty work,
yeah.
Or sitting by the pool where the pool boy brings you your drink every half hour, whether you need one or not. This is perfect for that.
Should we give our friends and listeners time to make their own?
Absolutely.
Hold on. And we're back.
Yes, we are.
All right, Karen, might you have a brief synopsis for us?
I do.
I have one too, but mine is very brief. So I think you might have chosen a different one.
I'm sure I did.
Go on. Tell me a story.
Dr. Andre Crespi hates Dr. Stephen Ross, who married Crespi's girlfriend, Estelle. During surgery, Ross appears to die. Crespi has given Ross a drug that induces an apparent death, while Ross retains all of his senses. Dr. Arnold is then asked to exhume Ross by the suspicious Dr. Thomas. They exhume the body and return to the hospital to prove he was poisoned. Ross awakens from the drug while on the autopsy table.
That's accurate.
And hilarity ensues. I don't know, it kind of is abrupt.
Thank
but
you,
yeah,
Karen.
It's pretty accurate.
Thank you, Karen, for that brief synopsis.
You're welcome.
Are we ready to get into it? Anything else we need to discuss?
Where did you watch it?
I watched it on Amazon Prime, Karen.
I did also. It's a cheapie. Only $1.99.
$2.12 with tax.
Well, just go and ruin it, Greg. Thanks. Wah, wah. $2.12.
The film starts and there are no warnings, Karen.
It's
None.
rated 13 plus.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
I did not see that.
There should be a smoking warning.
There should be. And smoking and alcohol use, Karen.
Yes, I agree.
And frightening scenes.
Sort of, yeah.
Film starts and we have credits, Karen. And during the credits, it says, suggested by Edgar Allan Poe's The Premature Burial.
Yeah, we see credits over a book, and the binding has Edgar Allan Poe on it. Edgar Allan Poe had some strange imaginations. The man was dark.
I'm just assuming he wrote about his fears, Karen.
Still, it'd be a tough thing to do.
So I take it you're not familiar with The Premature Burial.
I am not. Are you? Is it a short story, a poem? What is it?
I am not familiar.
You're not?
No. It is a short story, published in 1844 in the Philadelphia Dollar newspaper.
Well, there you go.
$1 in 1844 is the equivalent of $39.57 today.
Seems a bit high.
So, yeah. So I don't think the newspaper was actually $1. But it is a short story about being buried alive. Apparently that was a fear at the time, common for the period. And Poe took advantage of the public interest. You know, because back in those days, they used to have little bells and stuff.
Yeah, we learned that when we were doing a tour of New Orleans Cemetery. That's where Saved by the Bell comes from.
Ah.
Because they would put strings in, and if you woke up in your coffin, you could pull it and it would ring a bell, and the caretaker would come and save you. It's also where I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole comes from. In New Orleans, all the graves are above ground, so they're crypts, and they would use multiple bodies in a crypt. So when one body had decomposed and were only bones left, they'd use a 10-foot pole to push the bones to the back of the crypt and put the new body in. But I did ask on the tour if anyone was saved by the bell, and they said yes.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, you're just full of common knowledge, Karen.
Yeah, well, I do love New Orleans.
The film opens, Karen, and we're riding in an ambulance, and we seem to be in a hurry.
A big one.
Passing a lot of Ford Model A's as we drive along. You know, the Model A was produced from 1928 to 1931, Karen.
It's a nice car.
It is. But we end up at the Taft Clinic, Karen.
Yes, we do.
Interesting name. What year was Taft president?
I have no idea.
No idea?
I can't do history or geography. Don't ask me either.
Well, I'm just wondering if it correlates. No, it does not. He was president much earlier. He was president from 1909 to 1913. But he was...
I was going to say 1918 or something.
He was Chief Justice from 21 to 1930. So, I don't know. I guess it could have been named after him. But anyway, we're at the Taft Clinic to see Dr. Crespi, apparently. There's an elevator with manual doors, Karen.
It's a bad elevator, meaning it looks fake. It's a Plan 9 from outer space elevator kind of thing. It's bad.
It is. And they're taking a body to the operating room, right? But
I couldn't tell it was.
There's another body going the other direction.
Yeah, we're definitely establishing it's a hospital, even though they call it a clinic, because it has an operating room. And then we meet a bunch of doctors.
Dr. Thomas comes out of his office and asks the guy pushing the body, covered in a sheet, who is it? And the guy says the aviator or something like that, doesn't he? I think it's aviator, but
yeah,
he pronounces it funny.
He probably practiced that line over and over and over, all the different ways he could say it, and that's what he went with.
And Dr. Thomas tells him, well, get him out of here. Dr. Thomas, played by your favorite actor, Karen, Dwight Frye.
Yes.
Then we see nameplates and people to introduce us to all the various characters, I believe, is the purpose.
You're kind of skipping over the comedy relief that we're at the maternity ward.
True.
And there's an anxious Italian father pacing back and forth. And then we start to see nameplates. So Miss Gordon is the nurse that's dealing with the Italian man.
We don't know he's an expectant father, really, though. He just keeps asking any news.
Oh, I knew he was an expectant father just by watching him.
Stereotype.
It said maternity ward.
Did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a sign. So yes, he keeps asking her and she keeps saying 5 more minutes, which she keeps saying 5 more minutes, which I thought was kind of funny later.
And Dr. Crespi arrives, and Dr. Thomas tells his receptionist or nurse or assistant or whatever the hell they are that he would like to see him.
Well, wait, there's also, we meet Dr. Arnold, who's on the phone, and he's calling to a nurse asking her out on a date.
We see Dr. Crespi in his office smoking a Marlboro. His assistant nurse, whatever she is, comes in and puts on his white coat and then gives him a rundown on all of his patients and then tells him that Dr. Thomas would like to see him.
Okay, we have to stop because Dr. Crespi's wearing the wrong coat. The coats are wrong. They're opposite in this.
Oh, because his is short.
Yeah, so surgeons were the first to wear the white lab coats. And then hospital doctors and general practitioners in their private offices began wearing them. By 1915, wearing white coats had become a customary thing. Doctors start out wearing short white coats to symbolize their commitment to a lifelong of learning. As they continue to study, the coats they wear become longer and longer. So the short length white coat is worn by medical students, and that's true too today. And the full length ones are worn by physicians. 90% of medical schools in the United States have a white coat ceremony where new students are given a short white coat at the beginning of their studies. And when they graduate, they get a long white lab coat. And medium coats are in between. So if you're seen by a doctor in a short white coat, you're being seen by a medical student. If you're seen by a doctor in a medium coat, it's probably a resident. And then if you're seen in a long coat, that's the completed education of a medical doctor.
What if your doctor is just wearing scrubs, Karen? What does that mean?
Usually means they're a surgeon. They do wear scrubs more and more, but a lot of them still wear the white coats.
Well, Dr. Thomas comes in and tells Dr. Crespi that the patient in room 310 has passed away. Didn't make it. And
Dr. Crespi has a large lab in his office, by the way.
He does. Dr. Thomas asks Dr. Crespi to make out the death certificate. And then Crespi asks Thomas the time of death, and he says, oh, I think 3:45. And then that angers Crespi. He and Thomas have words because
Crespi's got a short fuse.
He does. He pays him to know, not to think.
Yes. And he's yelling at him when he says it because he thinks it's careless. Although I don't know how you could possibly be in the room with every patient at every moment to know when they took their last breath. But I suppose somebody would have known, but I don't know. But he gets very upset.
Yes, they didn't really have like the monitors and things that flatlined
Right,
and alerted
right.
the nurses and things back in 1935, did they?
Probably not. But Crespi has a short fuse. That kind of is what we're learning here. He's pretty tough and he's yelling at this Dr. Thomas.
Then we cut to the Italian man in the waiting room, and he learns that he has 5 babies, quintuplets.
Yeah.
And there's comic relief.
What do you think the odds of conceiving quintuplets naturally are, because they're multiple babies.
The odds.
Naturally. So there's a lot of
with no fertility.
Yeah,
drugs, right?
Which is very common now. So they're not common now, but they're more common than they used to be because of fertility
you're saying
drugs.
like 1 in how many? Is that what you're saying? Asking me?
Yeah.
I'm going to say 1 in every 780.
The odds of conceiving quintuplets naturally are 1 in 60 million. With reproductive
that was a little low. Yeah,
with reproductive technology, that chance goes up to 6 in 10,000.
A little low.
Higher order births are classified as 4 or more. So yeah, that's pretty rare. So yes, there is comic relief, and he's got 5 babies.
And we see Dr. Crespi reading the newspaper. Prominent physician injured in smash up. Dr. Stephen Ross's car turns turtle on drive. Dr. Crespi says, too bad. Too bad.
Doesn't seem broken up about it, does he?
Then Crespi's assistant calls him and says, Mrs. Ross is on the line. And he tells her to tell Mrs. Ross that he cannot be located. And we cut to doctors telling Mrs. Ross that the only doctor that can save her husband is Dr. Crespi.
Yes, there's multiple doctors at her home. So he is at home.
He is.
But no one in the whole world, no one but Dr. Crespi.
And we cut to Dr. Crespi doing shots in his office.
And smoking. He does an excellent exhale of smoke.
Does he?
He looks like he's vaping. There's so much smoke coming out his nose when he's smoking.
I didn't really notice.
I did.
I did notice that his cigarette was short and then it was really long next. Like in the same scene. It changed.
Yeah, but he is definitely a chain smoker. He's always smoking.
Well, he has one of those little tins too. And I think that probably only held like 10 cigarettes.
But it was fancy.
It was.
How many cigarettes are in a pack?
20.
20, okay. Even back in 1935.
I'm assuming, yeah. So Mrs. Ross goes to see Dr. Crespi in person.
Yes, she feels like he's avoiding her on the phone. She tells the doctors he won't talk to me. So she just decides to go to the clinic and find him. And she is wearing very nice clothes.
Is she?
I thought so. But Crespi tells his assistant to tell her he doesn't want to see her. But she just barges in his office.
She does. They leave the door open.
I know. But she starts begging. And he greets her very kindly.
And Crespi smokes his Marlboro as Mrs. Ross tells him about the car accident.
Stephen's hurt. He might die. And he says, why did you come to me? She could have gone to any one of them. And she said, no, I couldn't. He's the only one. They all agree that only Dr. Crespi is the one that can help him. And she's literally begging him.
And I wrote there's an interesting shot here. Like the shot is from like the corner of the desk, looking at them. I thought it was interesting. Apparently his case might have held 20, 10 on each, side. So when you flip it open.
Very important, Craig.
20. Well, you asked.
I think my grandma had one of those, but I never paid attention to how many cigarettes it held. It is kind of cool that you flip it open, right? And you have the cigarettes there.
Yes. It's way cool, Karen.
Well, much prettier than the pack smashed. And plus it kept it from being smashed, especially for women, in the bottom of your purse.
Yeah, so Mrs. Ross pleads with Crespi. He's the only one who can save her husband. And then we find out about the love triangle, Karen.
She keeps saying, can't you just forgive and forget?
Yes.
Forgive and forget. And he doesn't look like he wants to. Forgive and forget.
No.
They all knew each other, and then what happened, Greg?
That mean old Dr. Ross came in and stole Estelle from Dr. Crespi.
Stole his girl.
They made love, Karen.
Right in front of his eyes, he said. Right? Or something like that.
Something like that. Under my nose or something like that. He uses some expression.
And Dr. Crespi looks like he could be her father, but whatever.
True.
Dr. Ross is much younger.
Crespi calls the attending physician, right?
Well, she does go into a long thing about how happy she is and how Stephen never knew that he had Crespi had feelings for her. She never told anybody that Crespi wanted to marry her. So Stephen didn't know.
Well, yeah, Stephen knew. We find out later he did.
Yes, but she's trying to tell him that he didn't because she wants him to save Stephen. So she's saying he didn't know.
So Crespi calls the attending physician to find out about Dr. Ross's condition, right? He agrees to have Dr. Ross brought in.
He has a clot.
And Crespi calls Dr. Thomas to have him take an ambulance and go get Dr. Ross.
At home. And he knows the address.
So they leave Crespi in his office. Then he pulls an envelope out and looks through newspaper clippings he has saved about Dr. Ross.
His stalking file. He's got a file on Dr. Ross.
He does. And it has articles like Dr. Stephen Ross awarded highest honors in Paris.
He was the former assistant to Crespi.
Dr. Crespi, yes.
Yeah. And
then there's a clipping of the Ross wedding at St. Thomas Church, I guess, is what it is. And Crespi's anger escalates, it appears, Karen, as he's sitting there.
He's pounding a pencil on the desk.
So he walks over to his little lab in his room with his test tubes and beakers.
Well, first he breaks the pencil, so we see the tension. Then he goes over to the test tubes, and he's looking at liquids and pours one liquid into another and then adds a little more liquid.
Yeah. No Bunsen burners or nothing bubbling, though.
No dry ice.
Nope. Dr. Thomas enters to tell him that Dr. Ross has arrived. And we cut to doctors scrubbing up for the operation, and one of them finds it odd that Crespi is operating on Dr. Ross, not only because they were friends, but because he knows about Estelle.
Yeah, Dr. Frank says a man like Crespi doesn't forget easily, especially if a woman is involved. So it seems like one doctor kind of knows the history and one doesn't, but they realize that's a little bit not unethical. I don't know if you would be allowed to operate on your friend now. Probably not, but maybe if you're the only one in the whole universe that could possibly save him, they would let you, I guess.
And we see Dr. Ross. They wheel him in. He's conscious, right?
He's
conscious.
Conscious. Yes. Okay. I thought you said and his conscience.
No,
well, yeah,
conscious.
I guess. Yes. Usually arrives with you.
If you have one, Karen.
If you do. Yes, true. Into the operating room where it's completely white and no blood at all.
And Crespi promises Estelle he will do his very best. So they're operating on Dr. Ross as Estelle waits outside. And here I wrote, no blood.
And the film is jumping a little. It's giving me a little motion sickness at this point. Not on purpose. It's just an old film.
And after the operation, the doctors and Estelle are all in Crespi's office smoking Marlboros. Well, Estelle's not, but the doctors are.
But they're all congratulating him on the excellent work he's done.
Yes, this is the
Crespi.
best job he's ever seen him do. He's watched him operate many times, and this is the best job he's ever seen. He's in awe of Dr. Crespi's magic hands. Or something to that effect, Karen. And we cut to Dr. Arnold flirting with the nurse again.
Yep.
Wants her to go someplace private where they can take a letter.
But she spouts off that Dr. Arnold is the most competent physician in the world, and he's cute too, and he should be the chief surgeon at Taft Clinic. And he says, "Shh, you'll get me fired." It sounds like Crespi rules with an iron fist.
And back to Crespi's office, he gets a call about Dr. Ross. They want him to come see him, and he says he will be up in a minute. But he hangs up the phone, lights a Marlboro, and I wrote, does some paperwork using an inkwell. And then I wrote, death certificate, question mark.
Yeah, it looks like he's making out a death certificate. But he's taking his good time, he's not.
Yeah, we do get a shot of the clock, and it's like 10 till 6 or something.
Yeah, and then he writes 6:15.
He writes 6:15.
Yeah.
On whatever he's doing there. And he shoves it under his mat. What are those things called? Desk mat things.
Yeah, desk calendar.
Yeah. And we see Crespi at his beakers and test tubes filling a hypodermic needle, Karen. Were you okay?
Yes.
Were you okay at this part?
That makes me nervous, but I pushed through.
So Crespi goes to see Dr. Ross, and he injects him. And he says, it will help a great deal, he says.
You're going to feel so much better.
And Crespi goes to leave. And before he's out of the room, Karen.
Right. About 3 steps from Dr. Ross.
All of a sudden, he has no pulse and he's not breathing.
And that's it. Oh, well, yeah. So sorry.
Crespi tells Estelle he is sorry. And then Estelle breaks down. Crespi goes back to his office. He asks his nurse to go home with Estelle because she will need someone, Karen.
But first he catches the doctor flirting with her and hears them say, we'll meet tonight at 8. Yeah. So in order to ruin their date, he makes his nurse assistant go home with Estelle.
Oh, you think he's doing it just to ruin their date?
Yes.
Maybe it is. And Dr. Thomas brings Estelle in, and she cries on Crespi's shoulder. He says he will stop by about 9 o'clock to check on her. Dr. Thomas asks Dr. Crespi after Estelle leaves with the nurse there if he's going to make the death certificate out before he leaves. He pauses and then he pulls the certificate out from under his desk calendar or whatever it is.
Yeah, why didn't he just make a new one? That was stupid. Oh, I just happen to have one right here with the exact time we need.
Yes, and we have eye acting back and forth.
Yes, we do.
Between your favorite actor, Dwight Frye, and
he's suspicious.
The guy who plays Crespi.
It's sus, as the kids would say these days.
He hands the death certificate to Dr. Thomas, and then they verify the time as 6:15.
Yeah, don't you think that was kind of weird? Like, why didn't he just make one? Or just make a new one?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really get that.
Pro tip, don't do that. Don't have the death certificate ready to go if you're going to kill your friend.
We cut to Estelle's house, and she sends her daughter off to bed. Crespi is there now and tells her that she needs to pull herself together, Karen.
Yeah, this crying stuff isn't going to do you any good.
No, perhaps you should go away on a vacation. Get away. Crespi says he will attend to all the arrangements for her husband.
What a guy.
He's so nice.
Go to your mother's house.
Next, we're at the morgue, Karen. No admittance, the sign says. No one's allowed in the morgue, apparently. But we see a shadow figure. He enters through the window.
Yeah, but of all the people, you'd think Dr. Crespi could go in the morgue. And it's awfully easy to get in the morgue. You just go in the window.
We see it is Dr. Crespi, and he is checking the bodies in the morgue. And he finds
it's not very
Dr.
full.
Ross. No, there's only like 3, 4. And he talks to Dr. Ross. And Dr. Ross's eyes blink. Crespi tells him the drug only lasts 24 hours.
So this is the drug that he put in him right before he was declared dead.
Yes.
And he's, hello, Stephen, my friend, my dear, dear friend. And Stephen is waking up.
So Crespi gives him another injection.
Well, he says, you're not dead, are you? Even though he signed his death certificate. They just think you're dead. But we know different, don't we, Stephen? Yes, you're right. The drug lasts for 24 hours. So he's just coming out of it.
I like the lighting in this shot, too.
I like the lighting, too, but that doesn't make any sense because he gave him the death time was 6:15.
True.
And it's midnight. So there is No, 24 hours is not correct.
Details, Karen. Details.
Sorry. But he does give him another shot.
And Crespi tells Ross how he's been waiting for this moment for 5 years.
You made me suffer for 5 long years by marrying Estelle.
And we see Dr. Arnold, and he apparently goes to...
Well, wait, go back a little bit, because there is something in there. Because right now you're feeling like, oh, God, Crespi is just being awful to Stephen for no reason. And Stephen's such a great guy. And it does say, you can't laugh at me now the way you did when I begged you to leave Estelle alone. So there's a little bit of Dr. Ross was not just the nice guy that everybody, well, Estelle is making him out to be. He knew, and he did it anyway. And he says, I'll never forget that laugh. And he has hoped and prayed since that moment to pay you back with interest. So we see that, you know, Stephen's not a saint. Not that he deserves this. I'm not saying that, but he was kind of a dick. But then Estelle didn't love Crespi anyway. So it's, you know.
Hello, boys and girls. Karen and I hope you are enjoying the podcast. You know what I think can make your listening experience even better? A delicious themed adult beverage. You can find all our drink recipes on our website, scaryspirits.com, in the recipe den. Tune in every Wednesday and join us for a drink. Now, back to the show.
And we cut to Estelle's house, and Dr. Arnold has arrived, and he's jealous.
He calls the nurse, who says Estelle has been given sleeping powder so she won't wake up right away. I didn't look that up. Did we look that up once before, sleeping powder?
I don't know.
Seems like maybe
Sounds
we
familiar.
did. Yeah. But they meet downstairs outside of the Ross house, and he's mad because she's broken the second date, and it's always because of Dr. Crespi.
Cut back to Crespi talking to Ross, and he tells Ross that he will see his own funeral, and you will see me standing above your grave. You will be buried alive. He says, I'm going to send some flowers too, a big bunch of flowers. They'll be right on top of your casket, so you'll be able to see them.
Yeah, he says, tomorrow around midnight, your muscles will be alive again, but it'll be too late. You'll be in the casket, which he picked, with 8 feet of heavy earth above you. I think this is probably the creepiest part of it, because he really goes into detail that he's going to stand on the edge of the grave. You're going to pound and scratch and grasp and suffocate. And he laughs because he knows all this is going to happen. And he knows his favorite flower. So, Greg, what's your favorite flower? Just, curious. What would it be?
I can't think of one, Karen.
Well, you have to, or I can't stand above you and laugh maniacally that I'm going to put it on your casket.
Don't really have a favorite flower.
That's disappointing.
I can't say that I do. Something purple, Karen. Just, come up with something.
Yeah, but I can't taunt you if it's not your favorite flower.
Well, what's your favorite flower, Karen?
Well, I'm not telling you. I'm not falling for it, see?
Next day, Crespi arrives, and the nurse tells Crespi that a man from the funeral parlor has arrived to take care of Dr. Ross.
Yes, which is not what he wanted to happen.
No, not at all. So he gets
and
a little
she sent
angry.
him downstairs. She's like, yeah, I sent him downstairs about 15 minutes ago.
Right. So Crespi goes down to the morgue, and he chastises the funeral guy, saying that he ordered that they only supply the coffin. And the man tells Crespi, he's done nothing to the body, and sorry, he's the new guy. So Crespi says, oh, okay. And he
blames it on Dr. Ross. He just says Dr. Ross didn't want anything done. He doesn't like undertakers, basically.
Crespi pays him, and he goes on his way. In his office, Dr. Crespi does another shot. Dr. Thomas enters and confronts Dr. Crespi. He accuses him of poisoning Dr. Ross, and they struggle. Crespi strangles Dr. Thomas, and he binds his feet and hands and drags him
He
into a
smacked
closet.
him a good one, too. Dr. Crespi smacked him, and then he's like choking him, and they fight. And Dr. Thomas says, you murdered him. You murdered him, and you can't get away with that. But somehow he's choking Thomas. So I think Thomas loses consciousness because Crespi does bind his hands and feet and covers his mouth.
And Crespi gets on the phone and calls the flower people.
Why didn't he give him a shot? That would have kept him out for 24 hours.
I don't know. Crespi orders flowers for Dr. Ross. He says carnations are his favorite. And he says, but I like roses, so carnations and roses. And on one ribbon, put, to my valued colleague, sincerest friendship. And then the other ribbon, just put, Andre.
He also wants the most beautiful floral design that ever came out of your shop. Money is no object.
No object. And we cut to the funeral and we see the flowers where it starts. The Andre ribbon.
And we do see Dr. Thomas moving around in the closet.
Yeah. Then we cut back to Thomas, Dr. Thomas struggling to get free in the closet. He bangs on the wall and the nurse hears him, but she thinks it's someone at the door, but there's no one there.
And she leaves without helping him.
Yep. Back to the funeral. They're carrying Dr. Ross's body to the cemetery. And Dr. Crespi is one of the pallbearers.
Yeah, they lower him into the ground.
Cut back to Dr. Thomas banging. Nurse is on the phone, still does not find him. Back to the cemetery, lowering the coffin into the ground, Karen. The preacher says, earth to earth, and throws some dirt on. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
Estelle's crying.
So I said it's a nice shot of Estelle. Her face. It's pretty good.
Yeah, they're close up on everyone's faces, kind of going around the preacher, Crespi, Estelle.
And we see mourners leaving the cemetery, and Dr. Ross has been buried. Crespi arrives back at his office, smoking a Marlboro.
Like, is he just going to leave the guy in the closet? Or then I thought, did he kill him? Like, maybe, he was dead after he tried to get away, but...
He pulls Thomas out of the closet. He unties him and says he is going to let him go back to work, but he needs to keep his ideas to himself.
He threatens him, too.
Threatens him with a demotion if he says anything again.
Next time you have bad dreams, he says.
Yes.
This is cocky, too much arrogance.
Well, he's like the head surgeon. He's like the
I know,
greatest surgeon in the world, Karen.
You got to tie up those loose
Probably
ends.
has a God complex.
True. I'm just saying, you can't let loose ends be running around like that.
I agree.
Which is why we're back to what's your favorite flower, Greg? I can't put the wrong one on or people be like, she didn't even know him. Look at that. He didn't like those flowers.
Well, if you know anything about me, Karen, I'm going to be cremated. So I will be dead.
Well, that's true. There's no digging you up. There's no digging you up from that.
Dr. Thomas goes to see Dr. Arnold. Dr. Thomas tries to get Dr. Arnold to help him dig up Dr. Ross and check him for poison. And
I did have one other question. Mm-hmm. Every time that Crespi goes to get his alcohol out of that little cabinet and there's that tiny skeleton on the top, does it change position? I thought it kind of, at the end, I started to notice that.
I don't think it's a thing.
Okay.
It's like a fetal skeleton, right? Or something.
Because he goes to his bar. Yeah, he goes to his bar, which has that fetal skeleton on top, and he takes out the whole bottle. Dr. Crespi does, after he kicks Thomas out of his office.
And he starts doing shots.
Yes.
But Dr. Arnold doesn't want to help Dr. Thomas, and Dr. Thomas threatens to go to the district attorney. And then Dr. Arnold says, well, you don't want to do that. That'll put us all in hot water. So he agrees to help him.
Yeah, first he says, if you bring him back here, I'll look at him with you. And Dr. Thomas says, I can't do it by myself. You know that. Arnold is afraid of Crespi. But eventually he agrees to go.
Does. And they agree to meet at the cemetery. at 10 p.m. And we see Thomas and Arnold at the cemetery. We cut to Crespi reading the newspaper in his office. Cut to Thomas and Arnold digging up Ross in the cemetery. Cut to Estelle at her house trying to explain to her daughter about what happened to her father.
Yeah. The little girl keeps asking about Daddy.
And that they're going on a trip to see Grandma. Cut to Dr. Thomas and Dr. Arnold pulling the body out of the cemetery.
Yeah, and at this point, Dr. Crespi's
As
about
Crespi
halfway through the bottle.
Takes another shot.
Yeah, he's halfway through.
And we cut to Dr. Thomas and Dr. Arnold driving in the car with Ross in the front seat right in between both of them.
They're pulling a weekend at Bernie's. They got the dead guy in the car with them. He's not really dead, but...
They get Dr. Ross back to the hospital, and Dr. Thomas and Dr. Arnold begin examining him as
we do
Crespi
find out,
does more shots.
Yes, and we do find out that Mrs. Ross is going to come back to the office before she leaves town, to Crespi's office. So Mrs. Ross, Estelle, is going to be there at Crespi's office.
And Dr. Arnold makes a note that the rigor mortis has not set in yet. He's been dead for a day and a half or whatever.
Yeah, he should have rigor mortis.
Should he, Dr. Karen?
We talked about that at some point.
I don't remember how long it takes.
Not very long. It's almost midnight, and they're going to cut him open so they can test. I don't know why they have to cut him open at the chest to test for poison, but that's what they're going to do.
Yep, and he starts bleeding, and clock strikes midnight, and Dr. Ross rises.
He sits up.
It's alive!
Like Dracula in the coffin.
Cut to the nurse, Crespi's nurse, talking on the phone, telling her friend that there's no excitement at the hospital. She feels like just going to sleep. Hasn't been any excitement since the quintuplets.
Pretty exciting.
And we see Dr. Ross approaching from behind her.
Yeah, he's walking by himself. Did the two doctors just let him walk out of the...
I think so.
Weird. They could have helped him.
Probably freaked out.
I guess. Put him in a wheelchair,
they probably
maybe.
Cowered in the corner and watched him get up and walk out.
But he's walking kind of like a zombie.
He
a little bit, shuffling along.
Dr. Ross reaches the nurse and puts her hand on her shoulder and asks for Dr. Crespi. And she screams.
Are those his only words?
Yeah.
I think those are his only words in this whole movie.
Estelle arrives at the hospital.
Yeah, she's down in the lobby.
Yes. And Dr. Ross enters Crespi's office.
And the bottle is pretty much gone at this point.
Yeah. He's had a few shots, I wrote. And he thinks he is seeing a ghost. So I don't think Dr. Ross says anything in the office there, does he?
No.
He just sits down and
Crespi just says he's ugly. He's an ugly ghost.
So then Estelle, Dr. Thomas, and Dr. Arnold all enter the office. Dr. Crespi pulls a gun from his desk.
And everyone stares at everyone else.
Yeah, then he tells them he's not going to hurt any of them. Don't worry. He says he is through. The great Dr. Crespi. And then bang! He shoots himself, Karen, apparently. We don't see it.
No.
But he must shoot himself in the gut because there's no head wound. Because we do cut to him falling behind his desk.
Yeah.
And here I wrote, it's a nice shot with the infant skeleton shadow behind him. Next day? Is it the next day or was it later?
Know.
Much later.
I think it's later. It's much later because we find out that...
Well, the Italian dude is there.
Well, you used to stay in
visit his babies.
You used to stay in the hospital longer, and I'm sure quintuplets come with complications. But Dr. Arnold is married because Mrs. Arnold is in there. So
Dr. Arnold arrives, and he is now the chief surgeon. Apparently, he married that nurse.
Yeah.
Then Dr. Thomas comes out, and I think he has to see Dr. Arnold, and the nurse tells him, oh, Mrs. Arnold is in there with him, blah, 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 blah. Then Dr. Thomas asks the nurse for a date.
And romantic music plays. But why would Mrs. Arnold be in his office? He's arriving in the morning. Weren't they just together at home?
Maybe she
Young
had
love,
an early shift.
Young love.
And the nurse says, oh, Dr. Thomas or something, right?
Yes.
The end. And no credits. Just the end. Not even a good cast is worth repeating, Karen. The end. All right, Karen. Anything you enjoyed or were pleasantly surprised by in this film from 1935, The Crime of Dr. Crespi, starring Dwight Frye, your favorite actor?
I like the story. The movie is short. What is it, an hour and 6 minutes?
3 minutes. 63 minutes.
63 minutes. They cram a lot of information in that 63 minutes.
The first half's a little slow.
It is, but you understand why he's so upset. And, a man can hold a grudge. He's had that grudge for 5 years. Yeah. Well, not as well. He holds a grudge better. But he's hoped for a moment where he could exact revenge over 5 years. Can't let it go. Just wouldn't let it go. But I thought...
I know the feeling, Karen.
I like the story. I thought there were some really menacing parts in it when he's leaning over him and he can't move or talk and he's telling him exactly what's going to happen. Yeah, that was really, it's scary. That's the kind of thing that can give me a nightmare. And there's not blood or gore or anything. I didn't realize how much of a trope Dead but Not Dead was. I mean, we've seen a lot of those movies lately. The first time I ever saw something like this, and I don't remember where it was, and maybe we'll see the movie eventually, was a voodoo movie where, they put him in a trance and you look dead, but you can tell. Just the thought that you can still understand, hear, and see everything that's going on, but you cannot communicate or move is terrifying, I think. And I thought the acting was okay. Crespi came out a little bipolar, like, swinging from anger to not anger. I mean, he's tied up the guy, thrown him in the closet. Next thing you know, he's just letting him go. So I don't know. But I did like the story. What about you? What did you like?
I thought there was some good cinematography in it. Some artsy shots I thought that I liked.
That is.
Story was fine. Yeah, it was good too. Yeah, I did like Dr. Crespi. It was well acted. He was, anyway. I thought. Reviews at the time said Dwight Frye saved the movie, though. So
really?
Yeah, I don't know.
Interesting. I mean, he was okay, but I didn't think anything extraordinary.
Apparently, the Poe short story centers around a person who has catalepsy and has a fear of being buried
that
alive.
would give you a fear of being buried alive, since you could just lapse into that, like in The Comedy of Terrors. That's a legitimate fear.
It was common in Poe's works, apparently. And I noticed the movie poster for this says Edgar Allan Poe's The Crime of Dr. Crespi.
Again, just using his name.
Yeah. That's like Edgar Allan Poe's
Witchfinder General.
Yeah, but it was, what was it? The
Conqueror Worm.
Conqueror Worm, yeah. Nothing to do with it, but whatever.
And The Pit and the Pendulum, same. I mean, there was a little bit more crossover in that one, but the stories are very different.
Anything else you liked?
I like the clothes. I like those era of clothes, 30s and 40s. I will say the wardrobe was fine. The sets, yeah.
Yeah, I kept wondering why there were nothing on the walls behind Dr. Crespi's desk.
Yeah, like
I thought it was like a projection screen for a while. But no, there's nothing there.
I mean, I don't know if doctors got certificates back in the day, but that's usually what's behind the doctor, or medical books, or, anything like that.
Yeah.
So we can move on to what I didn't particularly care for were the sets like that. The elevator was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing on any of the walls anywhere.
Well, I think at the end of the hall, I think it was supposed to be a window looking out on the city. And it looked more like a painting because it was a painting. So I couldn't tell if it was supposed to be a painting or a window.
No, gotcha.
You know what I mean?
I mean, there was that fetal skeleton. That was kind of cool, but it was just sparse.
Not much set dressings.
Yes, sparse. And there were some pretty big holes. If he was such a brilliant guy, Why did he let Dr. Thomas go? Why did he hand Dr. Thomas the death certificate that was already filled out? I mean, I get you get some satisfaction as the evil genius filling it out, but don't shoot yourself in the foot by pulling it out and raising suspicion. So there were some plot holes.
Yeah, the time.
The time with the 24 hours didn't add up, but after
unless
that,
he gave him like half a dose the first time, so it was only good for, or a quarter dose, so it was only good for 6 hours.
Something like that, yeah. Is there anything you didn't like?
I don't know. It looked like it pretty low budget as far as sets and things go. I mean, I like the funeral scenes and the cemetery scene and all that.
Yeah, and there were some, like, even at the funeral, like you said, there were some nice shots of all the different mourners and the different expressions they had and how affected they were by the death, which was nice.
Yeah, that's it. Didn't really, hate anything. So I'm looking at the IMDb page, right? And on the photos, there's a picture of Crespi handing Thomas the death certificate, and they have superimposed a certificate on the wall behind them.
It needs something. You're almost distracted by the sparsity of the set, It's very Plan 9-y, where there's just not, you need a little more attention to detail, I think, because it's noticeable.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else I didn't really like. It was fine.
Yeah, I agree.
Short and to the point.
Yeah, but if you have that fear, that it'll get to you, I think.
Did you know that this was the highest billing of Dwight Frye's career?
Well, according to you, what you saw, he saved the movie.
Well, that's what the review said at the time. I thought you would have known that, I thought you knew all of Dwight Frye trivia, seeing as he's your favorite actor. Karen.
Yeah, you'd think I would know that.
Apparently it was shot in 8 days. They did it in a week.
Well, that makes sense. I can see that.
All right, Karen, what kind of cocktail rating you want to give this film?
I think it's a 3. It's not too complex, but
it was better than I thought it would be. Actually,
it's creepy. If you take the time to actually think about how that would feel and being in the casket. I mean, he was buried for 6 hours. He knew it. He couldn't do anything, but he was aware that he was, 8 feet underground. And he knew all of it was going to happen because Dr. Crespi stood over him and taunted him with it. And he couldn't stop it. And I think it's inherently terrifying to have to think about that kind of thing.
I agree.
And also it's kind of interesting to have you did something that probably wasn't the greatest thing to do, and now your life depends on the person you fucked over. That can't be easy either.
Anything we learned today, Karen?
We learned about the white coat tradition. We learned about quintuplets.
I didn't know that, the whole 10-foot pole thing and the
Saved by the Bell.
Saved by the Bell, which was apparently is common knowledge to you, but I wasn't aware.
Sorry, why are you so upset by that? You obviously have not toured as many New Orleans cemeteries as I have.
Nope, never been there. Learned a little about the Model A, quintuplets. Yeah,
when we went to New Orleans and we were about to go into one of the cemeteries, when we were on the tour guide gave each of us a gree bag, right, to stay safe. And my friend just hands me hers and says, "Hold this." And I was like, "No, you have to keep that on you. What are you thinking? You can't go in without your gree bag." You wouldn't tell me your favorite flower, but we also
What's a gree bag?
Gree. It's
gree bag.
I don't know what's in it. Protects you. I don't know if it's cemetery dirt or what. Keeps you safe from the spirits.
Okay.
Kind of like smudging. They can't come home with you.
All right. What do you think of our catatonic cocktail?
This is one of my favorites.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's really good. Again, I think it's more of a summer drink.
Mm-hmm.
But, when we're on the lanai, you could make these. The only thing that's kind of a bummer about it is it uses so little, like a half an ounce of tonic water. My tonic water's in a can. I
Yeah,
can't save.
mine's in a little bottle. Yeah, you can't
You
save
can't
it.
save
No.
it. So yeah, you're using a tiny little bit. So that was kind of a bummer. But otherwise, I really liked it. Did you?
Yeah, it was good. I had the tiny can of ginger ale. I almost took the whole can too to top
Yes.
off the
See, I
glass.
opened. I think we need to stock the bar with tiny cans of soda.
Yeah, that's what I do.
No, I don't, because my kids drink it otherwise. But that's a good idea to do that
Yeah, buy the tiny cans.
of everything.
Yeah.
Don't buy the 99-cent tonic water because you're going to open it, the big bottle.
Yeah, the big
and then
1 liter.
Yeah, you open it and use a half an ounce.
No, I bought 6 tiny bottles. I'm still wasting one, but I got 5
I'm not
left.
saying, I'm just saying if we were all drinking them sitting around the pool, we wouldn't be wasting the tonic water.
True that. And we might have more than one, Karen.
Possibly.
Just saying.
Drink it with friends. Share the love. Share the tonic water.
It does get a little pulpy at the end.
Yeah, I strained mine because I don't
didn't.
like that.
I don't either, but I didn't.
It bothers me. But that's probably where a lot of the vitamin C is. So
Yes.
it's good if you drink it.
It makes it healthy.
Yes, that it does.
All right, Karen. Next film, I believe, is your choice. Is it not? Do you have a film for us? Have you selected one?
I do.
And what would that be?
We're going to watch the 1933 Mystery of the Wax Museum.
Any reason you chose that film, Karen?
So I chose it because it is Lionel Atwill's birthday on the day this comes out.
Okay.
And the lovely Fay Wray stars with him in this film.
Okay.
There are a lot of Wax Museum movies. This is the 1933 version, which is going to be hard to find.
Yes, it is. The lovely Fay Wray, you say?
Yep. One of your favorites.
We'll see. Do we have a cocktail, Karen, for Mystery of the Wax Museum?
We do.
Starring Lionel Atwill and Fay Wray from 1933.
So this one, you're going to have to come along on a journey with me as to why I picked it.
Okay.
But we are going to make the Galaxy Magic Mule.
Galaxy Magic Mule. I'm assuming that's not like Magic Mike or anything, right?
No, unfortunately not. And it doesn't have anything to do with donkeys or mules either.
Okay.
But the movie, The Mystery of the Wax Museum, was filmed in 2 colors.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a 2-color cocktail.
Okay. That was a short journey.
Well, it's a little complicated, though.
I'm with you.
So first, you're going to make magic blue ice.
Okay.
You're going to need 8 flowers of the butterfly pea flower tea and 2 cups of hot water. So
Okay.
you add the hot water to the butterfly pea flowers, allow to steep for 3 to 4 minutes, strain out the flowers, and pour into ice cube trays and freeze.
Okay.
You can get the butterfly pea flower tea from Amazon, but I don't know if it's available, and it might be available in health food stores or something. It changes color. I don't know if you know about the butterfly pea flower tea.
No,
It's a blue color. And then you're going to need vodka, lime juice, ginger beer, crushed ice, and then we're going to crush the magic blue ice.
Okay.
It's made in a Moscow Mule. That's why. But if you want to see the colors, you want to do it in a clear glass.
Mm-hmm.
So partially fill the mug with crushed clear ice, then top it with the magic blue ice. Add a half an ounce of freshly squeezed lime juice, and then add 2 ounces of vodka and 4 to 6 ounces of ginger beer, and top with additional magic blue ice. It looks pretty cool. With the citrus, it changes color.
Okay.
It's a 2-color cocktail. I believe it comes out purple and blue. Well,
Okay.
we shall see. I have very little success when I'm trying to make these things layer or whatever. So it's going to be fun.
Okay.
It's a crafty cocktail.
Butterfly
Pea flower tea.
tea. PEA
Yes. It's little blossoms.
flower. Might be my favorite flower, Karen. You never know.
Could be. Well, I just have to keep searching. I'll ask you every time. What do you think of daisies, Greg? You like those?
Kind of plain.
Mm. Oh, so you're a fancy guy, like hydrangeas?
I like irises.
Irises are nice. And they would be purple.
Yeah.
Some.
Some.
You can even get black ones.
Yes, you can.
So there you go. We're inching closer.
I like petunias too. I plant black ones every year.
They're not a good cut flower though for making your funeral wreath. But if I'm sparing no expense, they might make it work.
All right. Anyone you need to thank this week?
I'd like to thank our listener, Greg. There are a lot of podcasts out there. Thank you for spending time with us. What about you? Who do you need to thank?
Taryn, I need to thank Terrence Jones for commenting on The Fog YouTube video.
Did he say something nice?
Apparently, The Fog is one of Terrence's favorite movies.
You have a soulmate.
Multiple exclamation points.
Just like you.
Yes, and that's I replied saying, yes, me too. So thank you, Terrence. Thank you for listening and or watching.
And or just commenting without
And commenting.
either.
Yeah.
Maybe he just said it's one of his favorites and didn't even listen.
Could be. I also need to thank the band Verse 13, Karen, for providing all the music in the Scary Spirits podcast.
The music definitely makes the podcast better.
Anything else, Karen?
Please drink responsibly.
Yes.
Thanks for listening to the Scary Spirits podcast, where the movies might be iffy, but the drinks are always solid. We would love to hear from you. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Scary Spirits Podcast, or go to our website, scaryspirits.com. And if you want the direct line, email us at info@scaryspirits.com. If you really want to help us out, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And remember, always drink responsibly. See you next week.